They cheered the day your body was forced into the world. They smiled while your face twisted in agony. They laughed while your lungs collapsed into a scream. They called it beautiful. But you knew better, even without words. Your cry wasn't confusion. It was recognition. From your first breath, you were betrayed. They dressed the trauma in blue or pink, handed out cake, clapped as you struggled to breathe, because they needed to believe it meant something. But it didn't. It was just the beginning of your slow disintegration. No one told you that. No one warned you. They had to lie. Because the truth is unbearable. The truth is this: you were born to suffer. Not because of something you did, not because of some cosmic lesson, but because you were born with a nervous system that feels pain, in a body that decays, in a world that doesn't care. The first thing your body learned was that everything hurts. They brought you into this world without asking, wrapped you in soft blankets, and expected you to perform joy, to be grateful, to say thank you for the skin that bleeds, the heart that breaks, the time that runs out. And if you don't, you're called broken, ungrateful, depressed. They'll tell you something's wrong with you. But what if something's wrong with them? What if that scream, that first scream, was the only sane reaction to the nightmare? What if the joke isn't that you cried, but that everyone else smiled? Every person you know was born into a countdown. Every breath is one less. Every dream ends. Every body rots. Every relationship either fractures or dies. And still, they hand out balloons. They tell you life is a gift. But look closer. It's a sentence. An unchosen sentence, inherited through biology, cemented by culture, reinforced by lies. A sentence of endurance, of performance, of pretending to be okay. You never stood a chance. You weren't born to thrive. You were born crying, and everyone ignored the reason why. Now ask yourself, why were you the only one in that room who understood what was really happening? And why did they silence you with a lullaby? Your first memory isn't a memory. It's a cry, torn from your throat before you had a name. And what did they do? They clapped. They called it a healthy reaction. But what if that scream wasn't health? What if it was the first warning that something was terribly wrong? The theater of birth is grotesque, but we romanticize it because the truth is too heavy. Birth is not miraculous. It's violent. It's invasive, bloody, and traumatizing for both mother and child. The newborn is not meeting the world. It's being ripped from non-existence into a chaotic, oxygen-burning, light-drenched battlefield. Clinically, the process is brutal. The infant goes from perfect aquatic warmth to brutal, dry exposure. Temperature shock, a surge of adrenaline. Stress hormones flood the body. Heart rate spikes. Lungs collapse, then inflate under pressure, gasping for unfamiliar air. The baby screams. The doctors call it a good sign. It's not. It's the sound of a body registering its first trauma. Neonatal psychologists confirm that birth trauma is real, measurable through cortisol levels, oxygen deprivation, disrupted sensory patterns. This isn't abstract philosophy. It's science confirming the intuition that scream carried. This hurts. But instead of silence, they cheer. Instead of empathy, they throw a party. The tragedy begins with applause. Philosopher David Benatar, in Better Never to Have Been, writes, "Coming into existence is always a serious harm. And that harm is not metaphorical. It's biological, psychological, ontological. Your body never fully recovers from that first rupture. Everything that follows, growth, learning, bonding, happens on top of a foundational trauma. You were thrown into existence without preparation, without consent, without understanding. But here's the twist. They knew. The adults in the room knew what life does to people. They'd been broken themselves, by time, by grief, by regret. Yet they smiled when it happened to you. They knew you'd grow into a body that bleeds, a heart that shatters, a mind that turns against itself. Still, they welcomed you into the slaughterhouse like it was a birthday party. Look around. The world is not built for kindness. It's a rotating machine of competition, decay, disappointment. Childhood doesn't protect you from that. It just delays the impact. You learn to walk, only to be told where not to go. You learn to speak, only to be told what not to say. You learn to hope, and then spend decades learning how to bury it. The first chapter of life is a farce dressed as a fairy tale. They give you lullabies and stuffed animals, but the real world waits with open teeth. They say it's beautiful. But if you had the choice, knowing what you now know, would you have entered it? The question isn't whether you cried. The question is why everyone else stopped. No one teaches you how to suffer. They teach you how to hide it. From the moment you arrive, the world demands a performance. You're in pain, smile. You're lost, clap. This is not survival. This is rehearsal for a lie you'll be forced to repeat until you die. After the blood dries, after the cord is cut, the real deception begins. You're not just born into pain. You're born into a culture that denies pain, disguises it, laughs in its face. They call it resilience. But it's not resilience, it's suppression. You're taught to frame your suffering as growth, your losses as lessons, your despair as a test. It's the mythology of endurance, a cultural hallucination that turns agony into virtue. And if you break under the weight of it, that's not the system failing. It's you, always you. This is not love, this is grooming. Cioran once wrote, "It is not worth the bother of killing yourself since you always kill yourself too late." He understood the machinery, the way life breaks you in increments, and how, even in your most honest moments of despair, you feel guilty for not pretending. Society hands you a mask early, a happy one. You learn to wear it before you even understand what it's hiding. Your parents teach you, your teachers reinforce it, your friends reward it. Even therapists, paid to help, are often trained to repair you just enough to send you back into the system that broke you. The expectation is clear. Suffer silently. Smile publicly. Look around. Sadness is permitted, but only in short bursts, sanitized, staged. Cry too long and you're toxic. Break too visibly and you're unstable. Stay broken and you become invisible. So you do what they do. You join the charade. You laugh at your own pain. You joke about your trauma. You tell people it made you stronger, even when you know it didn't. Because in this culture, truth makes people uncomfortable. And comfort is currency. Here's the cruelty. They laugh not because they don't understand your pain, but because they do. And they've already made peace with ignoring it. Like a crowd at a public execution, they learn to find beauty in the brutality. A baby cries at birth, they toast to it. A child breaks down in class, they call it a phase. An adult collapses under depression, they call it weakness. A suicide happens, they call it tragic, and move on by Monday. This isn't just society being blind, it's society being complicit. Nietzsche said, "Man is the cruelest animal." And what makes him cruel is not just his violence. It's his ability to frame suffering as entertainment, as proof of strength, as character building. Every film, every novel, every story with a happy ending is loaded with pain. But no one questions why we need so much of it just to feel inspired. Misery is the fuel of meaning in this system. Without pain, there's no plot. So when you were born screaming and they smiled, that wasn't confusion, that was programming. They were preparing you for a world where your pain would feed someone else's narrative, or be silenced altogether. You weren't just born into life. You were born into a stage. The costume was picked for you. The script was already written. And the audience is waiting, not to see you live, but to see how well you fake it. You are dying, not someday, not eventually. Now you don't live and then die. You start dying the moment you're born. Your cells know it. Your body obeys it. And still, they called it a beginning. As if rot isn't rot just because it starts slow. Every heartbeat you've ever felt was a countdown. Every breath borrowed. Every second a grain of bone dust slipping through the clock. Your body is not designed for joy. It's designed for survival. Temporary, fragile, and brutally inefficient. You are a meat machine built on chemical instability, genetic errors, and evolutionary shortcuts. Your skin is a membrane that tears. Your brain runs on electricity and trauma. Your heart, the so-called engine of life, is a pump that fails 100% of the time. That's not metaphor. That's a biological guarantee. So why call this a gift? From the moment you cry out in that delivery room, you begin breaking down. Growth isn't progress. It's just a prelude to decline. Cells replicate imperfectly. DNA accumulates damage. Organs wear out from their own function. This is not personal failure. This is biology's plan. Entropy is not an accident. It's the rule. You are ordered decay, organized collapse. There's no immunity from this truth. Healthy or sick, rich or poor, loved or abandoned. Every body is temporary housing for inevitable rot. Philosopher Thomas Metzinger once argued, "There is no such thing as a self. There is just a story the brain tells itself. And your body, that collapsing architecture, is the narrator. It tells you you're okay until you're not. It tells you you're healing until it breaks again. It gives you hunger, sex, fatigue, and fear. Not for joy, but for replication. The system does not care how you feel. It only cares that you continue, long enough to copy your suffering into another body. That's not poetry. That's evolutionary psychology. You're not here for happiness. You're here because molecules are too dumb to know when to stop. You're a pattern that keeps repeating itself, not because it should, but because it can. Ligotti said it best in The Conspiracy Against the Human Race. We know that life is evil, but continue to live as if it were not. This is the core contradiction. You're taught to strive, to fight entropy, to seek purpose, but the materials you're made from don't support that mission. Flesh is not noble. It's not even neutral. It's a prison with a countdown, where the walls cave in slowly, politely, until one day they don't, and you're expected to be grateful. This lie shows up in the language. We say passed away instead of decomposed. We say he lived a full life instead of he lost every cell he ever had. We dress corpses. We perfume caskets. We tuck death inside euphemisms to protect a dream that was never real. Biologically, life is not sacred. It's a glitch that became self-aware. And now that you know this, ask yourself, was that first scream really just a reflex? Or was it the purest, most honest response to the sentence you were just handed? A sentence written in blood, wrapped in skin, fueled by a heart that never stops until it fails. You didn't choose to be born. You didn't choose your body, your brain, your wiring, your pain. And yet, the moment you arrived, they began holding you accountable, as if freedom had ever been real, as if the puppet should thank the strings. From the very beginning, you are handed a lie dressed as love. You can be anything. You're free. You're in control. But control is a myth reserved for posters and propaganda. In reality, you were constructed, atom by atom, gene by gene, expectation by expectation. Your biology limits you. Your culture molds you. Your family programs you. And what you call choice is often just the path of least resistance wrapped in language that flatters the ego. You were born into a story that started without your consent, and you've been cast in a role ever since. Philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer wrote, "A man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills." That is not wordplay. That is the cage. You can act, but only within the limits of your design. Your genetics decide your mental health before your first word. Your environment decides your opportunities before your first decision. And your culture decides your worth before you even understand what value means. What they call freedom is just a narrow corridor with lights on the ceiling and exits that lead to different versions of the same dead end. You're taught that life is a journey, but journeys imply direction, intention, destination. What if it's none of that? What if life is just inertia dressed up in costume, neurons firing in loops, impulses repeating themselves in predictable, mechanical patterns? What if the system doesn't care what you want, because it already knows what you'll do? Science supports this. Neuroscientists like Benjamin Libet showed that the brain initiates actions before we become consciously aware of choosing them. Free will, in this view, is a post hoc illusion. The story your mind tells itself after the decision has already been made. You are not the author, you are the character. And worse, you're expected to smile about it. This is where the cruelty deepens. Society doesn't just lie to you. It punishes you for not believing the lie. If you're poor, it says you didn't try hard enough. If you're mentally ill, it says you didn't think positive enough. If you're angry, it says you didn't heal fast enough. Everything that crushes you is reframed as your fault. Even when the machine was built to break you, you're not a soul navigating a world of options. You are a system of reactions, refined by genetics, pushed by hormones, shaped by trauma, sedated by media, disciplined by school, monitored by algorithms. And still, when things fall apart, they ask, "Why did you choose this?" As if you wrote the script, as if the outcome was ever yours to steer. You cried when you were born, not just because of pain, but because somewhere in your primitive brain, you sensed the setup, that no matter what path you take, it all leads back to the same invisible leash. So the tragedy isn't that you were born crying. The tragedy is that they taught you to believe it would get better. If only you tried harder, prayed louder, smiled longer, obeyed faster. You stopped crying. Not because it stopped hurting, but because it stopped mattering. And that silence, the one you carry like a shadow, might be the only true response to a world that never made sense. Death doesn't interrupt life. It completes the punchline. You begin in protest, you scream at the absurdity. But then something happens. You adapt, you learn the rules, you speak when spoken to, you laugh on cue, you suffer politely. That's what they call growing up, mastering the art of silent collapse. But the scream never left. It just folded inward, became quieter, became language, became anxiety, became insomnia, became numbness, became fatigue. Until one day, you no longer react. You go through the motions. You're still here, but hollowed out. The pain didn't disappear. You just ran out of ways to express it. French philosopher Albert Caraco once wrote, "We are born to die. That is the only certainty we have." It sounds bleak, but maybe it's the only honest sentence ever written. Everything else is embroidery. Philosophy, religion, culture, ambition, all desperate attempts to distract from the truth that nothing lasts, and most of it hurts while it's here. And yet, we're punished for facing it. To say you want to die is treated as illness. To say life is suffering is treated as melodrama. To speak honestly about your despair is to be labeled unstable. Not because you're wrong, but because you're interrupting the narrative. What society fears most isn't death, it's clarity. Because clarity dismantles hope. Clarity tears down the illusion that effort will save you, that love will complete you, that purpose will protect you. And still, the system needs bodies. It needs believers. It needs future workers, consumers, parents, patriots. So it tells you that life is sacred, that every moment is precious, that suicide is a tragedy. But what if the real tragedy is that we weren't allowed to choose? What if the ethical failure was not in ending life, but in forcing it to begin? Philosopher Julio Cabrera defines life not as a right, but as a harm. He argues that existence itself imposes a moral injury, because to be alive is to be subjected to pain, loss, aging, and death without prior consent. From this view, non-existence is not a void, it's neutrality. It doesn't erase joy. It prevents the harm required to experience it. This is not a call to despair. It's a confrontation with what's already true. You are mortal. You are temporary. You are deteriorating, beautifully, quietly, inevitably. And that knowledge doesn't have to break you. It can liberate you. They lied when they said life was a gift. But they were right about one thing. You cried at the beginning, and that was the last time you were fully honest with the world. What came next was survival, not truth. So maybe silence isn't failure. Maybe it's the final act of resistance, the refusal to keep pretending, the closing of the curtain, the punchline they never saw coming. Because in a world that rewards delusion, the one who stops performing is the only one who sees clearly. If you've made it this far, you already understand. This world wasn't built to be kind, but somehow, here we are, surviving, questioning, refusing to smile when it hurts. Videos like this aren't for everyone, they're for you. The ones who feel something deeper, who know that beneath the noise, there's a silence we're all trying to understand. And if this message reached you, if it echoed something inside you that's rarely spoken out loud, then this space was made for you. Creating this kind of content, honest, dark, real, takes time, strength, and a kind of emotional fuel that's hard to find in the algorithm-driven noise out there. But every time you watch, every time you share, you keep this alive. That alone means more than you know. Still, if you believe in what we're building, if you want to go further, to help this message reach the people who need it most, consider becoming a channel member. Members get exclusive content, behind-the-scenes thoughts, priority in comments, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing you're keeping something rare alive in a world of distraction. And if you felt something today, a shock, a truth, a moment of clarity, you can also tap the super thanks below and leave a direct mark of support. But no matter what, whether you join, donate, or just stay and listen, you're already part of this. You belong here, and I'm grateful you exist. Stay strange, stay awake, and never apologize for the pain that made you wise.